Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to our September 11th, 2019 meeting of the District Advisory Council. It's not on the agenda, and not politically, but certainly I personally have a lot of memories from this day. And if nobody objects, I'd like to just have a moment of silence in memories of what occurred on this date in the past. So we'll just take a moment and. Thank you. With that said, our first order of business is to approve the minutes from our last meeting, which occurred on May 15th of 2019. I don't know how many people have had an opportunity to see those minutes that went and looked at the agenda and pulled down the minutes. Show of hands, how many of you have had a chance? A couple of us. I know that in the future, what will happen is with the start of the school year, our staff didn't have everybody's email addresses. They weren't certain who was coming. So in the future, we'll go back to, there'll be an email that'll come out to you with the agenda and the minutes. With that said, I don't know if people want to take the time to look at that now, or I suppose I could entertain, seeing as I only saw about 4 or 5 hands, honestly, that have seen them. Okay. I would also entertain a motion to continue the approval of that to next meeting, at which time we can make sure everybody had a chance to look at them as opposed to trying to pull them up on the screen or something because we don't have them pre-printed. So if anyone's interested in making a motion to continue the approval of the May 15th, 2019 minutes to our next meeting, I would entertain that. And you are? Do I have a second? She just needs to get your name for the. All those in any discussion, any objections? All those in favor to continuing the approval of the May 15 minutes to our next meeting, so everybody will have a chance to review them, say aye. Aye. Motion carries. That's going to move us on to public comment from any non-DAC members on our agenda items. Do we have any non-DAC members that wish to give us public comment tonight? Seeing none, I will move to our board update from our lovely board member, Ms. Gwen Gittins.
You can do the superintendent first? Okay.
Yes.
So before I go, I will, I was the lovely, so I will introduce the lovelier. No, I'm sorry. No, my fellow co-worker is Dr. Atkins, and he's going to tell you a little bit about an update, and what he misses I'll fill in, or vice versa. But before we do that, I'd like to ask a question. How many people are here for your first time as a part of this committee? First timers? Okay, keep your hands up, and those whose hands are down, give them a clap, please. Welcome. It's painless, but there's a lot of information, and I'm sure you'll enjoy it. So now, Dr. Atkins, you want to take?
Yeah, I'll just take a very brief amount of time, because really the main reason that I was here originally was going to be that we were going to kind of report on the state of do a follow-up from the state of the schools, which is really why we're here. But we've got a wonderful team. Dr. Spiro will be leading, and that he'll be updating us in terms of our school performance. I think in general, what I'd like to say that overall as a school district, we are certainly moving in the right direction. And so I'm excited about the direction that we're moving in, but I'm even more excited about what we have coming up for this particular school year. We've been able to, I think, assemble a really dynamic team at the district office. This is going to allow us to continue to provide some really high quality support to our schools. And one of our favorite acquisitions would be Dr. Savage, who Dr. Savage, if you may recall, was a turnaround principal here in the school district and was responsible for the remarkable success of really turning around James Stevens International Academy. And also, prior to that, was a part of Dunbar High School's success of getting its, I believe, first A ever, moving it from literally a low D or F school to eventually an A in a very short period of time. And then when he got Principal of the Year at James Stephens International Academy, of course, the Department of Education comes in and swoops him up, steals him, you know, we warned him, but despite our warnings, he felt he needed to try to make an impact at the state level, and he said that was one of the most remarkable learning experiences I ever had, because I learned so much about what great things are going on across the state, but also what the challenges that we have across the state of Florida. So we were able to recruit him back here, and he has been able to, I think, really give us the ability to look at our schools on a statewide perspective. So as an example, a school that may normally be overlooked here in Lee County would be a school like Manatee Elementary. Okay, and I have to brag on Manatee Elementary because they're doing some remarkable things at that school. First of all, do we have a representative here from Manatee? All right, now, that's too bad because we are bragging about them, you know.
They're busy working.
Busy working, that's right. So Manatee Elementary, when you look at how well is Manatee Elementary doing relative to schools across the state of Florida that are working with similar populations, Manatee Elementary is at the 98th percentile. That means they're in the top 2% in the state of Florida in terms of what those students and teachers are doing at that school and how well they're performing. So that's quite remarkable. We weren't able to discern data like that before, but we're now able to do that. In math, by the way, they're just about the best in the state in terms of what they're doing mathematically for those kids. The school grade is a B, but in terms of how well they're doing, they are outperforming many A schools because they take a kid from where the student starts and brings them so much further than what you see at a lot of schools. Okay, so much more learning is getting added in the course of the school year. So he's, I think, going to be a huge help to our academic team, but also he's going to give us help on the operations side of the house as well, which is where we've got him working at the current time. And we'll give you more information later, and we'll be able to drill down into we're drilling down into each one of the schools and really looking at their performance relative to statewide. And it's not just about what their proficiency level is, but really how are you doing against schools that have similar populations that you have. Something that I do want to make everybody aware of that you may or may not be aware of is we do have a challenging situation in our county, and that is it's related to kindergarten readiness. So how ready are our kids to start kindergarten? So when our kids come in and start with us in kindergarten, the first week that they're here, they take a kindergarten readiness test. And this is something that happens statewide. If you look at how well Lee County students are performing statewide in kindergarten readiness, there's only 6 other districts in the state of Florida where students are coming in at a lower level of readiness for kindergarten. 6, and those are small rural districts. So we're the only large district in the state of Florida that has that low of kindergarten readiness. So that presents a remarkable challenge for our teachers to start at kids that are really not ready to be in kindergarten, and to get them not only ready for kindergarten, but then cover what they need to cover that year. The other challenge that's unique in Lee County that you're probably aware of is, of course, amongst the 40 largest districts, we have one of the highest indexes in terms of economic need for our students. So one of the highest poverty levels here in Lee County amongst the 40 largest districts. And then the last challenge that we have that's extremely unique is that while we're 10th when it comes to English language learners, we actually have led the state for the last 5 years in the number in the growth rate, I should say, of English language learners. In fact, we're the fastest growing district in our ELL population across the state of Florida, and that's been a trend that's held for the last 5 years. And just to put that into perspective, last year we added 1,697 more ELL students to our overall student population. And so, you know, our population grows about 1,300 every year, but actually it turns over 12,000 every year in terms of our turnover and student population. So in all of that turnover, you know, you're actually adding, you know, over 1,600, almost 1,700 new ELL students. These are students that where language is not, they have to acquire more skills in the English language. And over 40% of our kids come from homes where English is not the primary language spoken in the home. So, so if you have kids that come to school that have, maybe they're not ready for kindergarten, and then they also have some language barriers, that presents a very remarkable challenge to our students. So when you hear Dr. Spiro tonight and his team talk about the really great performance that you see out of our teachers, understand that those things I just told you about are challenges that you don't see as much in other districts. So for me, that just makes it just makes me really more fully appreciate the wonderful work that our teachers and our support staff and our leaders are doing in our schools every single day. So that is my update, and at this time, it is my pleasure to turn it over
I'll take it and
our-
introduce you.
Oh, okay.
I'll take it, Dr. Atkins. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Atkins, and thank you for being here and kicking us off. Let's give him a warm thank you.
I didn't tell me who I was supposed to introduce next.
You are. You're excused. My name is Dr. Jeff Spiro, and I am the Chief Academic Officer for the School District of Lee County, and I get the honor of working with my team and our chairperson Gittens with our District Advisory Council. And so I just want to take a moment and introduce to you 3 other individuals that will be with us throughout the course of the year. And they are the executive directors for elementary, middle school, high school, and special centers. So I'd like to introduce to you, this is our executive director. This is Dr. Denise Carlin. Dr. Carlin, you know her, I love her. She's been with you a long time. Also, Ms. Shanna Fletcher. Ms. Fletcher is executive director for elementary also. And then Mr. Clayton Simmons. Mr. Simmons is the executive director for middle school, high schools, and special centers right now. And I wanted to steal the microphone for a moment and introduce Ms. Gittens, because I've known Ms. Gittens since roughly 2007. We've had the honor to work together, both in the school together, but then afar when she worked at other schools, and so did I. And I could tell you with 100% certainty from personal experiences, Ms. Gittens is passionate about meeting the needs of all students. That is something I've seen personally, one-on-one, and then watching from afar as well. And so it truly is an honor and a privilege for me to introduce to you our chairperson, but our board member who's going to be with this whole year, Ms. Gittens.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay.
Now you just shut
I
it
just
off.
turned it off.
And you on.
Okay, it's coming back up.
Is it red?
I can talk loud. A second.
There you
Okay, there we go. Well, good evening again, everybody. And Dr. Carlin, I know you just can't stay away from us because this is the best advisory group. I just have a couple of things that I want to say. Our branding that we did, and for those of you that are not into the millennials, branding is like not changing our logo, but looking at our strategic plan and where we're going and what we're doing and kind of matching it all together and then condensing it down into 3 words. And the 3 words are personal, passionate, bless you, and progressive. And I'll talk about those in a second. Make sure, and if you're taking notes, please put these things down. If you're new to this, people are going to ask you questions when you go back to your school. What happened, or what about this? Or they know that you're on the DAC committee. So write down www.leeschools.net. That is your answer key to just about everything that they ask you. You can find it there. 2 areas that will be very specific to parents is the parent portal. And you can find that on, and that way they can get into, it's under parents, I think, under families. There's a section called families. So under families, if a parent or someone asks you a question, they can go there and find all the information they need. If it's a community member, maybe they don't have children, then send them to, under our district, Change for Change, and there's a section called Tracking Your Tax Dollars. And that will keep them busy for a little while. You can look at your individual school when someone says, well, what are they doing with that half-penny tax money? Well, that's what that site tells you. And it drills down to your very own school, and you can say, okay, what are they doing at Manatee, or what are they doing at Lehigh? And it will tell you, these are the projects, these are when they're supposed to be done, and what you can do. If a date has passed, then you start asking questions. Well, you said you were going to do this, and they told us we were going to do that, so what's happening? Okay? It gives you the questions to ask as well, and you feel more a part of it. Now, going back to those three things, personal is the first word. Make education a personal thing for you, whether you're a parent or just a representative or whatever. Make it personal. Mentor a child. We have so many kids that, and we're talking about the early learning, go to some of the schools and just read. If you do it once a month, or go back to your SAC and ask them to start a process where everybody goes once a month to a school or somewhere and just reads to a child and just shows them some attention. Be passionate about what you do and what we do, and passionate about making it as good as we can make it and making it better every day. And the last thing is progressive. We can't be progressive unless we look big picture and we make improvements. We were at a meeting on Monday, and one of the board members came up with, we were talking about the word change, and she said, well, rather than change, why can't we say refresh? And I love that, because it's not as harsh. You say change and people get scared, but if you say refresh, it's kind of like, yeah, okay? So the only way we can refresh what we do and continue to grow is to get thoughts and ideas from those of you that do it, from those of you that have children or grandchildren, or you work in the schools, or you teach, or whatever. So make sure that you stay involved, www.leeschools.net. I have to say that at the board meetings all the time, and try to say that really fast 3 times. You get really tongue-tied. But that is your key to following what's going on. There's another section called the Peach Jar that even businesses can put things up there, so you know what's happening in your community. Now, where are my District 5 people? East Zone? East Zone out there? Okay, here we go. All right, great. Where's the, yeah, good reference. Where's South Zone? Yes, and West? Okay. Well, thank you all so much. When you get an opportunity, if you work in a school, whenever you get an opportunity to visit a different school, it opens your eyes to what things are going on. Best practices are our best way to be progressive. And in education, the teachers here will tell you, one of the first things they teach you is steal, okay? Steal any great idea that you see. In education, it's a free-for-all. Wow, I want to try that. Well, go back, to your school and try it. That's the only way that we get better. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for your participation.
And at this time, we're going to ask Mr. Roger Lloyd to come up and talk to us a little bit about, there's another committee called I believe it's the Transportation Review Committee, and we need to, I'll give you a preview so you can pay attention. From each zone, we're required to elect one representative from our committee to participate in the Transportation Review Committee, and he'll give you a little bit of detail about what's involved, and apparently it's a little more up front, and then it eases off as the year goes on. It has to do with bus stops and things like that. So if you're in each one of the zones, I guess everybody's in a zone, but if you might have any interest in transportation and busing, think about whether this is something you'd like to volunteer for. I'll tell you up front, if we just get one volunteer from each committee, you will be our representative. If we have more than one, then we can do an election or see if the folks can come to an agreement about how to handle it.
Thank you. And I'm sure we're all going to rush to the front here for this next committee. It is an important committee. It's called the Transportation Review Committee. It's actually been in board policy for years. We haven't had it in quite a while. To put things in perspective, since August 1st to this afternoon, we've had over 4,400 stop change requests. And this could be a request to come look at a particular bus stop. It could be hazardous walking. And all of these requests are actually reviewed by my safety staff or one of my supervisors. So we go out there and we have to make a determination. We try to do everything we can to accommodate the parents. But like everybody else, we have rules that we have to follow. We have state and federal laws and regulations. We also have school board policy that we have criteria that we have to work within. Suffice it to say, I'm sure you've seen it. Not all our decisions are easy, and they're not always accepted by the parents. The Transportation Review Committee was set up for those few instances that get to a point where the parent just says, I'm not okay with that decision. I can tell you from our end, we have a process that it goes through the safety departments, goes through supervisors, senior administrators. They eventually all come through me. When they get to my point, I go out and check it all personally. I then have to make the decision, and it's based on laws, regulations, policy. The other thing that comes up, and this is something that we need to take into consideration, and I tell all my senior administrators, we're not going to break any laws or regulations. We're not going to break any school board policy. I don't have the authority to do that. And the last one is, we're not going to inconvenience other students. Because a lot of times when a parent says, I'd like you to move the stop 4 blocks closer to my house, that's fine if we don't have anybody else there. However, in essence, you're asking me to have 3 or 4 other students now walk 4 blocks further. So our stops are located so they're equitable to all the students. So there are times where you'll have 5 kids that are assigned to a stop, but 3 of the kids don't use the stop. Parents drop them off at a daycare, they go to the morning school program, or the mom just might drop them off at school. Those are the easy cases. That's when they send that nice email and say, thank you so much, we appreciate all your hard work. But those are the ones we can do. So the Transportation Review Committee. It is a committee that's made up of a middle school or an elementary school principal, 3 parents, 1 from each zone, a law enforcement officer. For us, it's usually the sheriff's office, but we've had Fort Myers Police sit in it as well. I'm a part of the committee and my safety supervisor. We are there more for questions if the committee has it. We'll have all the paperwork. We'll have a folder for you to actually look through, to go through. We do it bi-weekly. Beginning of the year, September, October, we might be busy, 7 or 8. However, it drops off significantly. And actually, the last time we had one, Miss Giddens was a member of it. I don't even know if she remembers this.
I do.
She does,
In that little room off the side.
In the little room. And I think we met twice, Miss Giddens, and then we didn't have to meet anymore.
That's it.
We can take care of 98, 99% of these. Because 1, we go through, we sit down with the parents, we meet with the parents. We really do a good job. Not that they're all happy, but in explaining it, we really do take care of most of it. But there are a few that want to go, above and beyond, and that's when Ms. Giddens gets the email or Dr. Atkins will get a phone call. And that's what this committee's for. This is a committee so the parents can come in, be heard yet again. We can go through there, and then a decision. It is, and it even says that the decision is final. There is no appeal process after the Transportation Review Committee. So this way, it really does have parent input, law enforcement input. And what we're doing is we're trying to be transparent. We're trying to say, okay, we've looked at it. Now we've had a committee look at it, and this is where we're at on the decision. So this is the point where, to be honest, I know biweekly sounds tough. I would love to have one parent from each zone plus an alternate, but at this point, I'll take any three.
Keep the standards high, right?
So let's start with the East Zone. Do we have a parent who would like to volunteer for?
Bi-weekly on Thursdays. It'll be Thursday at 6. When a parent comes in, if we only have a few, they get 5 minutes. And basically, they just talk. You can ask questions, but a decision is not made in front of them. We then talk about it, and then a week later, within a week, we'll get a written response back to the parents. But right now, they're Thursdays at 6. First and third or second? Well, we're going to wait to see who's here and then decide which one works best.
So that was, just for the record, Thursdays at 6, and they'll determine whether they're going to do the first and third Thursday or the second and fourth Thursday once they get the committee members.
So if you're the first volunteer, you get to choose.
Here, here.
So let's start with the East Zone. Do I have a parent who would like to volunteer, or more than one, for an election? I see one. Is anybody else from the East Zone also interested in being the representative?
It's right behind us.
So, and your name is? Heather Tuttle. Heather Tuttle is our representative. Whoop. Seeing as how we only have one person interested, I believe Miss Heather Tuttle will be our representative from the East Zone. Is there anybody from the East Zone that's willing to serve as an alternate? Charlie Morris is willing to be our alternate from the East Zone. Thank you, Charlie.
Thank you, Charlie.
And now moving to the West Zone. Do we have one or more folks that would like to be the representative from the West Zone?
Okay, don't let us show you up there.
Miss Gittens, you are a parent, aren't you?
I'm East Zone. We volunteer first.
Anybody from the West? All right, while you're thinking, while the West Zone is thinking, how about the South Zone? Anybody from the South Zone? Are you also a parent? Does that, I wasn't given, are there, will
Right,
that,
is that okay with you?
Well, the board policy says a parent, but if we don't have anybody, yes. I think most parents would be okay with it.
okay. So from the South Zone, we have Kathy Good.
Yay.
Is there somebody from the South Zone who's willing to be an alternate? Angela Haas for our alternate from the South Zone. All right. West Zone, we've got representatives and alternates. We need at least a representative from the West Zone here. Someone, please. Anyone?
And if we have an alternative, what we can do is you can alternate one meet that the Tuesday or
meeting,
whenever
yeah.
the other meet, and the other one meet on the Thursday.
You could split it.
So
Then it's not
really better
bi-weekly.
to
It's
have
just
an
it's just
alternative.
monthly. Anyone?
Okay. 2 parents it is.
West. All right, there we go.
Oh, thank you.
Sherry Clem. Ms. Clem was unanimously elected by the District Advisory Council as the West Zone representative. Isn't that phenomenal?
Give awards.
See, it's all in the presentation. And now we've got Dr. Jeff Spiro to give us an academic presentation. I think he has a few folks with him that he
I
also
do.
wants to introduce.
Thank you very much. This evening, I'd like to introduce to you 2 individuals that are going to be walking you through our data. 2 very talented and future, I always introduce her as the future Chief Academic Officer. This is Candace Oliveto. She is currently the Director of Teaching and Learning. Candace is extremely talented, and I am fortunate to have her on our team. And coupled with Candace is Ryan Libby. Ryan is a coordinator for research, accountability, and testing. Ryan also is someone that is very knowledgeable in the area of assessment, but is also able to quickly analyze information and put it in terms that most of us can understand that are not statisticians. And so this evening, these two individuals are going to walk us through our data and then talk a little bit about what we're going to be doing moving forward throughout the course of this year. So Candace and Ryan, thank you very much. Floor is yours.
Awesome. Good evening, guys. How are you doing tonight? Good evening. You're like, it's 6:30 and we're here with you, right? You've got to be smiling. So in true teacher format, like we ask your teachers to do in the buildings, we're going to start and you've got to do a little bit of work. So I want you to take the next 30 seconds and on either a sheet of paper that you have in front of you or notes if you take them in your phone, I want you to think about what do you know about Florida's school grading system and what are you hoping to get out of what Ryan and I are presenting to you tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and give you 30 seconds of think time. All right, thank you all for indulging me with that. So school grades in the state of Florida have actually been around since 1996. That's when the state of Florida first initiated accountability reports. Our public schools, though, have been getting letter grades of A, B, C, D, and so on since the 1998-1999 school year. This year, we are super excited to be able to present to you because we are able to say that in Lee County, of the top 10 largest districts, we don't have any D or F schools. So that is a huge highlight and success for us. So how are our schools actually graded? What is the criteria for that? There's district grades, because we get a letter grade as a district, and we are a B district, moving our way to an A district. That is our goal this year. But our schools also get letter grades. And in order for students to count in a school's grade and a district's grade, it means they need to be with us in both October, that's considered our survey 2, and in February, that's considered our survey 3. So that's one of the first criteria. Since we are such a transient population, it is very possible that a student is at Bonita Springs Elementary in October and at Three Oaks Elementary in February, so they're not going to count for the school grade, but those are still our students as a district, and we're still accountable for them. So they're going to count for us as a district, and that's very important to note. Some of the other pieces you see up there, as Dr. Atkins talked about, we have a very high LY population. Our students that English is not their first language. So the state has some parameters in place of when do those students actually count in the grading criteria, because we know it's not fair for them to be included that very first year if English isn't their first language, especially if they're a monolingual. So in the state's rules, they don't count in proficiency until they've been in a U.S. school for 2 years, and that's based upon the date they entered the school. So they've got 2 years. Now in terms of learning gains, because our students are growing every single year, as soon as a student has 2 state tests, they actually count in learning gains. So we are able to see the growth that they're making. So that we'll talk about the 11 categories, and learning gains versus proficiency will make a little more sense to you. So the state's district grading system has 11 components. Depending upon a school and if they're elementary versus middle versus high, they may not have all of these 11 criteria. So the first piece that the state looks at is proficiency, achievement. That's a student who's earning a level 3 through 5. And you'll see that's in English language arts. So that is for our elementary, middle, and high schools. Mathematics, which is our elementary, middle, and high schools. Social studies is going to be for our middle schools, that's civics, and our high schools, which is U.S. history. And then you have science achievement, which is 5th grade, 8th grade, and then biology. So those are the achievement components. But we also have learning gains. So students each year, we expect them to grow in different ways. And the places that we look at learning gains are both in ELA and mathematics. So the next components that the state looks at is what we consider our L25, or our lowest 25%. What's really important here is not to think about, hey, I have 100 kids, so if we do 25%, because mathematically it would make sense, it's our 25 students when we rate their scale scores. But what the state does is it's our lowest 25 students based upon a unique scale score. So if Ryan and I have the same exact, we're both included in there. So it's just a piece to note, because that is a piece that even our schools ask questions on. So those students that we're looking at are students that we really want to make sure we're providing growth opportunities for. And we look at those students very closely in both English language, arts, and mathematics. The next piece you see is middle school acceleration. This is solely for our middle schools, and what it includes is any high school EOC course. So it's our middle schoolers that we provide the opportunity to potentially take an Algebra 1 high school math course or a Geometry high school course. So those pieces are there. It also includes our career and technical courses. So if they pass those certifications, they count in middle school also. The last piece that you're going to see, both of those pertain to our high schools. So our graduation rate, which I'm really excited about, but I won't tell you because that'll steal Ryan's thunder. And as is, he's not gonna like that because I get the good stuff. And the other piece is our college and career acceleration. And what that component is that's all about us offering our high schools, by the time they graduate, that they have had the opportunity to take either a dual enrollment course, an AP course, an IB course, an ACE course, a technical certification. So those are those pieces there, and again, solely to our high schools. So the next piece that we want to look at before we jump into all the good stuff and breaking down how our schools actually did is learning gains. I shared with you that we look at learning gains in ELA and mathematics, but what does that actually mean? The last 5 years, the state has changed the rules on us. So I shared with you that we've had school grades since 1998, 1999, and it is ever changing. They are constantly refining it, and we are constantly playing catch up of where is that bar set. So what's on the screen there is previously the way the state defined a learning gain was set by just a number of points. So Ryan and I may have both only needed 11 points to make a learning gain, but it didn't matter what our levels were. So what the graph illustrates for you is that you could have a third grade student who is a level 1, that's that bottom trend, that made their learning gains every single year, but they never left us as a proficient reader. So that didn't sit real well, that we had students leaving us in high school not proficient, yet by the state's calculation, they were making a learning gain every single year. So a few years ago, the state actually changed their methodology. And what you're gonna notice now is we have sub-buckets. So our students in a level 1, it's actually broken down by a 1A, a 1B, a 1C, which means we've got some great opportunities to capture and figure out where are those deficiencies at. And then a level 2 is broken down into 2 categories, a 2A and a 2B. What you're gonna notice here with the black trend line is if I start as a third grader, as a level 1, but I make my learning gains every single year, in 5 years, I actually am going to leave proficient. And that's where we want to get our students to be, is that they're proficient in both ELA and mathematics. So that gives you the background for this, of what it means to actually make a learning gain. So it's to go up one of those sub-buckets of a 1A to a 1B, or to jump from a level 3 of proficient up to a 4, or our 5s, once they're up there, that's the highest level that the state gives, is for them to remain a 5. And it's really hard once you reach that, as I'm sure many of you know with students of your own, that when they're reaching that, every single year, it's getting a little more rigorous. So now Ryan gets to give you the good stuff. But again, the teacher in me says, you have to work. I just gave you quite a bit of information. So what we're working on with our teachers this year is some distributed summarizing. So what that means is I want you to go back into the notes you took, write down something new, and have I answered your question yet? So take those 30 seconds, and then I'm going to turn it over to Ryan.
So as Candace explained, what this illustrates is actually the 11 components that make up the overall district grade. It shows the change from 1718 to 1819, and we've illustrated the positive changes in green here for you. Here, we've circled 7 components for you to draw your attention to what is really important this year. With the new school grading rules, these are the highest these components have been. Most notably, though, is our graduation rate that Candace tried to steal from me.
Told you he wouldn't be happy with me if I shared that first.
It's the highest it's ever been in the district. So. So as we think about the growth in Lee County, and Dr. Atkins talking about 12,000 students every year flipping through us, we like to compare ourselves to the top 10 largest districts across Florida, as well as our 2 neighbors. And what we see here is the percent of AB schools that we have, and how only 3 of these large districts have a percentage that's larger than we are. So we move on. Yep. So this here shows the change in categories A, B, C, D, F from 1718 to 1819. Most notably, as Candace said, 0 Ds, 0 Fs, means 0 DA schools. So congratulations, especially to East, who moved out of that D this year. As we dive deeper into it, this slide shows the breakdown by level, our elementary, middle, high, and combo schools, with combination being a unique configuration of grades. So those are K-8s and other schools like that. Most notably, when we look at elementary, 31 of our 49 schools were an A or B. In middle school, it's 12 of the 17. In high school, I was 8 of the 17, and our combos, 10 out of 12, were an A or a B. Explaining a little bit further, in the 17-18, 18-19 change, 20 of our schools increased their school grade. Most notably, Trafalgar Elementary, going from a C to an A, our only school that jumped 2 letter grades. So 60. It was a charter school that had closed.
It's the best way.
Some call it strategy.
64 of our schools maintained their letter grade, and only 10 decreased this year. Again, one of the schools was their first time being graded Heritage Palms Charter. As we look at our traditional public schools, 18 of them increased their school grade, 55 maintained, and 7 had decreased. Back to Candace.
So breaking it down a little bit further, that gives you the whole picture of district grade and school grades. So diving in just a little bit is what actually adds up to all of those pieces when we break down our individual grade levels. And I'm so happy that we get to share with you even more positive data. We know where our opportunities are, but we had so many successes with it. It's really awesome to start your year off with that we're able to look at all of these areas that we're seeing growth in. So these are our FSA results from last year. So these are the ELA scores for 3rd through 10th grade there. And you can see that we are up in most of those areas. So we know that we have opportunities in 8th grade and 10th grade there, but if you look across the board at elementary, we're up in all 3 of our grade levels this year. So something we're celebrating as those students are moving into middle school, and we're hoping to see that continued success. If you look at math, and as we talked earlier, you got to hear Dr. Atkins talk about the math improvements, especially with Manatee Elementary. As you look across those grade levels there, we are up in almost every grade level with the exception of 7th grade, but we have a really unique story to tell with 7th grade. One of the pieces that we implemented as a district 2 years ago is that our middle school students don't take courses that are tied to their grade level. Instead, they're taking a course that fits their needs. So we can have a student who's a grade 7 student, but they're actually taking grade 7 mathematics, which will allow them to take pre-algebra as an 8th grader and algebra as a 7th, alg, and geo, or 7th, pre-alg, and alg. Wanted to make sure I gave you both those combinations of how they can get to their high school credits. So as you look at that, as we're accelerating, we have a cohort of students that we really want to be closing the gap with. So that's our story there with the math pieces. Now, as we talk about our opportunities that we have available for us, we know in our algebra, so here you're seeing that we did take a little bit of a decrease last year. We lost 2%. The state also dropped 1. So in our geometry, that same piece. Again, that story that's tying into it is who are the students taking it. So we're going to see a little bit of fluctuation as our middle school math and high school math progression iron out. Here you have our science for 5 and 8. So 5 and 8 are considered our NG/SSS science tests, as well as our biology that we have there. You are going to notice an opportunity for us is science across the board. So this year as a district, what we are committed to is really looking into science and making sure that our students have lots of opportunities, that they are inquiry-based, because we know as learners, if they are engaged in the doing, they're going to be able to retain it more. So those are some of the pieces as we move forward, what we'll be working on. And the last piece for you is both our civics and our U.S. history data there. Both of those pieces showing a nice upward trend. And the piece I have to brag on us again about is as we look at, and we know there were opportunities where we can be improving, when we think about all those pluses, and you got to see how the state was doing as well in each of those, the state overall had an 11-point increase across those categories, but Lee County had a 16-point increase. So that meant we are beating the state. We are closing that gap every single year and gaining, which is really important to be able to see across. So just to bring it back together for you, some of those pieces that we noted, again, some of our biggest ones that we really want to brag on is that graduation rate. And we're very fortunate in Lee County to have a graduation coordinator who is really focused in on that. So we are even looking into that data more as she reaches out to all of our schools, because our graduation rate as a district is both our traditionals and our charters together. So what can we do to make sure we're supporting all of our students in their graduation? And then that elimination of our DA. That was huge for this year, and that's a big celebration as we move forward. So how are we going to keep that momentum going? Some of those pieces that we know worked really well for us is a focus on the ABCs. Our attendance, our behavior, and our classroom successes. So because we know it's really important to have those students in the seats, and if they're not in the seats, they're not able to learn, but if they're not there, what is causing them not to be at school, and what can we do to make sure we have wraparound services so they're at school every single day? And then coupled with that, if they're at school and there are behaviors, what's driving that behavior? Is it that Candace is a low-level reader, and I would rather not be in the class and show my peers that I am a low-level reader, so it's easier for me to act out and be sent out? And if that's the case, what are the systems we can put in place to make sure those are being mitigated? And then the classroom successes, I got to demonstrate one of those with you tonight, is we are really focused in on our high yield strategies, which helps our teachers have conversations students to students, so they're doing that talking, writing to raise their achievement, and those higher order questions there. So you're seeing our full wraparound from academic services to help push our district this year, our goal of being an A district. So before we throw it back over, of course, you've got to go back to that writing one more time. Look at that one thing you were hoping. Was it captured there? If so, go ahead and jot it down. But jot down for yourself, what's the highlight that you're going to take back as you are our district advisory and you get to take this back to your schools and share with your SACs? Out of all those wonderful things that we were able to share, what one resonated with you most tonight? And then is there something you're hoping will clarify in breakouts?
So we have a few minutes before we need to go to our breakout sessions. I'll briefly give you an update on that, and then if we have a couple minutes, I think they're willing to take questions here, as well as I believe we'll have somebody in the breakout session. Yes, Ms. Gittens.
I just have one announcement. On www.leeschools.net, under Leadership Advisory Boards, you will find DAC, and just keep going down and you'll see the slide presentation that's there. That's something that you might even just want to show. Yes, ma'am. Okay, www.leeschools.net. You go to Leadership, and under Leadership, there's Advisory Boards, and then under Advisory Boards, look for DAC, and you'll look under the minutes for each one, and for September 11th, it'll show you our, the slides and everything, okay?
And this is Erica. Erica is our secretary, and she will go ahead and send it out to everybody tomorrow as well, so you have a link, direct link to that site, so you don't have to write all that down. So we'll make sure that gets to you tomorrow.
Yes, ma'am. If you,
Sorry, regarding ODAP, if there was something that wasn't brought up, growth. So, I'm in the East District, and our elementaries, our middle, and our high school, I'm on stats for all three. They are at capacity and past capacity. And at that point, it definitely is impacting their school and student grades. So I would like to just put that out there and really ask how the district is planning to fix that. Not just necessarily with building new schools, but also perhaps providing additional buildings for existing schools, replacing portables. I don't know if anybody knows this, but the portables at any school, they cost roughly $150,000 per year per portable. I know my school, Lehigh Middle School, has 11, and for $6 to $8 million, there could instead be a building there. Every time there's a storm, and there's any kind of a weather situation where the children have to be on lockdown, that means every child at every school that's in that area in a portable stays in that school. They're losing class time, and the teachers that are there are also not being able to utilize, we can't utilize their talents because they are not able to then teach the next group of students that come in. Schools that are over capacity, such as mine, by over 400 students, we're at over 1,400. They lose class time when they have to change the amount of lunch times that the children have to go to. And it's the same at high schools and at the elementaries. So growth, particularly in the east zone, is the biggest issue that the schools are facing. Again, it does impact their amount of learning time, the minutes that they're in class, and it impacts their ability to jump buckets and attain those higher scores, and then give the schools the higher scores.
Great. I'm sorry, what was your name?
My name is Lexa Donnelly.
Lexa? Lexa, so I agree with you. Obviously, the growth in the East Zone continues to be a factor that's taken into consideration. And that was a very large question you asked, so I'm going to try to give you a couple different answers on that. One, all summer long, the curriculum and instruction department literally has dissected every school, even down to the student. And we have a tiered support from the area of curriculum instruction to say this school, based around the students that they have and the particular subject that needs, this is the extra support these students need to have. And we've met with every principal where we had in-depth data analysis so that we are partnered with schools to help them understand what their needs are and what we as a district can do to support them. And so then part of that is talking about how often does the district come out and provide the support that the schools need, and then specific subject areas as well. And that is an ongoing piece. The executive directors, myself, I've been at schools this week as well. We then go look and see, all right, so how is that working? What do we need to adjust? And then what other additional supports do we need to push in? So that is a continuous change in process depending upon what's happening with their growth inside of their building. In regard to the weather, absolutely, the principals have been very vocal about that. Matter of fact, I was in a meeting today with Dr. Atkins and the principals. They are getting sidewalks and awnings for portables out there. They'll be looking at portables that we own and portables that are rented and making sure that, you know, we're able to take care of what needs to be done in that particular area. So that is a work in progress, and that is being headed by the executive director. Her name is Kathy Ebaugh. Kathy is in charge of that particular project, and so she's already doing the analysis of which schools to begin with and the cost of what that would be, because obviously concrete and coverings are not cheap, and so we need to make an overall determination what that cost factor is going to be. And then the school board has been very supportive. You didn't want to talk buildings, but obviously we have to create buildings as well. So for example, I'll use Lehigh Senior High School. So Lehigh Senior High School just had the addition put on to mitigate some of the enrollment concerns in the East Zone, but it certainly isn't enough. So we do have the new MMM High School that's being built out in Lehigh and Gateway Community, which is one of many projects. So it's a multifaceted approach, but one that I could tell you is high on our radar screen for all of us. Ms. Fletcher, Ms. Carlin in the back of the room, and Mr. Simmons and I, we meet with the planning department on a regular basis to literally look at the numbers, and we say, where are we in kindergarten, first grade, second grade, by school? And we talk about what can we do to stop enrollment in some schools, increase enrollment in other schools to make sure that we have equitable distribution across the district as well. So it is truly a all hands on deck approach to solving this issue. But again, you know, a public school system, we welcome every student that walks in the door, and we just need to make sure we have that safe environment for them, but then a nurturing environment where we meet their needs as a whole child. And that's really our focus in the curriculum and instruction department.
And can I just add one little bit to that? When I was running for this position, one of the things that I talked about continuously was the overcrowding in the East Zone. And to some of the chagrin ad nauseum, I say to my board members all the time, what about the portables and the growth in the East Zone? So besides the MMM High School, the addition at Lehigh Senior, they're also getting ready very soon to break ground on a new either K through 8, I believe, off of Sunshine. And so it's the dilemma is that even as we're building, we're growing almost faster than we're building. And that's the issue. So needless to say, I will continue to keep bringing that to the forefront to make sure that it's not forgotten that that's one of our biggest issues right now.
So I want to give just a brief, and
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
Yeah, there's a planning growth department, and you know, they work with the county on doing projections, and that is part of the build out. They look out 5 years, 7 years out where their growth is going to be. Now certainly, you know, it's a model that predicts, but then not with 100% certainty, obviously, based around the economy and things that happen in the world. But yes, they do look at projections as communities continue to pop up.
And then we had a briefing recently about the half-cent tax and our budget and all of that, and they do go out like 10 years because the tax is going out for 10 years, and it is there to help us do that. One last quick thing, the lady in the back was talking about being able to, for the students to achieve in the crowded situations. An example that I give is Harns Marsh. Right, and they are well over where they should be as far as students in that building, and yet they still were able to go from a C to a B this year, and that was an awesome thing, so we can do it.
So I'm going to give everybody just a brief overview of the DAC committee. I think we're going to go into a little more depth at our next meeting. We have a little PowerPoint that we can go through to explain to you how the committee is supposed to work, but generally speaking, it works like it did tonight. Everybody comes in, we have a general session, we have a presentation. One of the things that we've been working on as a committee is making this more of a two-way street, that over the past several years, we're trying to move away from the concept that this is just a committee where folks show up, present to you, and you take it back to your schools. There's supposed to be an opportunity here for all of us to provide feedback back to the district. One of the commitments that we've gotten from Dr. Atkins is all of his staff people, this year as they do presentations, will endeavor to come to us with at least one question for which they're seeking our input. So we're trying to make this an interactive process so that it's truly soliciting feedback so that we can operate in the advisory role that we're supposed to. So that's how things are changing. Again, the first meeting was a little different, but 3 years ago, we didn't get presentations ahead of time. You had no way to look at this or talk about it at your school with questions. Now we get the presentations before you come on a regular basis. You'll have the opportunity to look at those things. We have a general session. A lot of times we do try to provide an opportunity for some questions that will apply to all schools. And then what we've been doing pretty consistently is we have our breakout sessions separated by the essentially elementary, middle, and high school, at which more specific questions can be asked that are relevant to those areas, and the presenters have been bringing their staff with them to have a representative in those rooms to answer those questions, and so that's where we seek to do that. Again, for those of you that are new, one of the things that we do, we're going to, in those breakout sessions tonight, elect a chairperson for each of the breakout sessions. It's helpful to try to have an alternate or an assistant that can take notes for those. The chairperson elected for each of the breakout sessions, or each of the groups rather, will then also serve on the executive DAC committee, which also meets once a month. It typically meets, there's a schedule that's put out, those meets on the Monday the week before the standard meetings, and we review things like what the agenda is going to be, and also look at what I was about to say. If you look at the minutes, the last minutes didn't have it, but typically what happens is we have a list of questions from the breakout session, and then we get written responses. One of the things the executive committee is committed to doing is reviewing those responses and giving feedback to believe that we believe the questions asked were properly answered. So you have the person that was sitting in there as your chairperson in your breakout session capturing the question, then also trying to look at the responses. And it's not about whether we like the response or agree with the response, but we're trying to look to make sure that the response fairly answers the question, that the person's questions gets answered. So that's the role of the chairperson that you're going to be electing in the breakout session that we're about to go to. And then next month, we'll also have elections for the chair and vice chair of the committee. So at this time, I'm going to ask everybody, and also in the breakout sessions, I think we have somebody for each of the groups. I'll make sure we have somebody for high school. So the people that were our chairs from last year will pick up books where there's a sign-in opportunity. Be sure to sign in by your name for the school as either the representative or the alternate to make sure your school gets credit for your attendance tonight. And the breakout sessions will be in elementary, will be in the media center, and Dr. Carlin will be here to direct you there. And I think high school and middle school will be where they were in the past, training room A and B respectively for middle school and A, high school and B. If you have any questions, we can help point you there, but it's essentially out those doors to the left for A and B, and Dr. Carlin will point people towards the media room. All right, and we will be back here at 7:45.
don't just send them a text and say,
Looks like we have just about everybody back. So I'd like to move to our breakout group reports. And for elementary school, you can do it right. He wants you to use that one.
In elementary, we had a lot of questions about transportation. Roger Lloyd's going to get a lot of cards. One
Email me.
that, as a group, we should consider is what happens when the elementary school parent pickup lines are on two-lane roads and blocking, right, so that's a county-wide question that we discussed. When they block, apparently the switchboard has been getting inundated with those kinds of calls. And then we had a number of people who have parents and questions in their SAC regarding class size this year and teacher pay. Some of that stems from a misunderstanding of what the half-cent sales tax was going towards, but then even when that's explained, now people are very concerned beyond that with teacher pay because of class size. We have some very tired teachers, and we're also short on some teachers, as are many of our large counties. So those are the elementary school issues.
thank you.
Hi, my name's Lexa Donnelly. I was the obnoxious one asking the big long question. So now I'm going to be the chair of the middle school committee for this year. We actually had several things that we wanted to talk about in depth. The first being a better explanation about how the school grades are counted, and particularly the lowest 25%. We got a little bit more information at the towards the end of our meeting about that, because it's not a simple answer. The way that it's determined is it's not going to be just the 25% of kids scoring the lowest on the tests at each school, like it sounds like it should be. But there are still, they're going to be based on the final grades and assessments and who took the same tests. So not necessarily kids in the same grade. So you may have a 7th grader who took, the example used was a 6th grade assessment and a 7th grader taking a 7th grade final assessment, and they're not going to be both considered in the same order. The 7th grader taking the 6th grade assessment would be put into a different lower 25%. And if that sounds confusing, it's because it was. So I think we were all still pretty confused at the end. And honestly, if we want more information, we need to dig a little bit deeper and look online. I think there's a better explanation online for that. The other really had to do with the way that our classes are being blocked. So a school that might have been in a five-block system for the last 3 or 4 years, now going to a 7-block system, and how the teachers are struggling at some schools to be able to adjust their lesson plans accordingly, because now they have less time with their students. And it's still an issue here a month in. So and the answer to that is that they're getting a little bit more help from the district, and they're using their built-in review days, and they're calling it leading learning, and the leading and learning team, pardon me. So any teachers or administration staff and schools that are struggling with changing the block system needs to go ahead and bring that up with, it was an online, yeah, there's going to be an online place to find the information. So I'm sorry I'm not clear enough on that. Again, it was a bit of an odd answer to the question, so sorry. And high school.
Hey everybody, my name is Amy Jane McWilliam, and I am the high school EDAC rep. Thank you, Stephanie, for your service, right? Okay, so we really spent the time introducing ourselves and electing me and David, who's the vice chair from Eastleigh. And we talked a little bit about some things that affect maybe a teenager or a high school student's ability to score higher on a test, some of the challenges, and Dr. Spiro was able to talk to us about the whole student approach, where it's embracing mental health, making sure that the needs are heard from the student to meet those needs, make sure there are supports and interventions available. They monitor attendance and suspensions and look at that at the high school level, and then go and visit the high schools where they see maybe a pattern or a difficult month or week. We also, some of our parents were just wondering exactly, we look at all those numbers and we're wondering what exactly are the challenges for a high school student, and like how do we help, counter those challenges, both as parents and then also what the district is doing. And again, Dr. Spiro was talking about the whole student approach. That's really it for the high school crew. So we have some cards that we submitted.
Thank you.
And then just as a reminder to everybody, in each of the breakout rooms, you have a book, and there are forms in here to help walk you through our process to fill out what your issues were and questions, so that can be properly rolled up. And any questions that didn't get answered in your breakout session will be submitted to the appropriate staff members to get a written response. And that's what I was talking about earlier, where our process now is for the executive committee to review that response just to make sure it fairly answers. Again, they're not, whether the response is good or bad, just that it properly or directly answers the question. So now this is the portion of our agenda where we're open to public comment from non-DAC members on any non-agenda items. Seeing none, I'll entertain any questions or comments for the good of the order at this time. Do we have any of those? We do have someone, if you could. And I want to remind everybody that when we ask questions, a lot of times what we do is we if we have more time in the general session, we'll have you come up to the podiums and use those microphones, or Cedric or I'll bring you a microphone. But again, these meetings are televised and recorded, and as a public meeting, we want to be sure that you always ask your questions or give your comments with a microphone, so that all does get properly recorded.
Hi everyone, my name is Siley, and I'm not a teacher, but I am a parent. Yes, Varsity Middle School. And I really liked what the high school team talked about, and that was the mental health. What concerns me is that there are 2 counselors in Varsity for 1,200 students. I don't know, something like that. So my concern is when children are troubled, they're not gonna go see a counselor. They're not gonna write a message on their Chromebook to request for help. These are troubled kids, and we usually help them when they hit rock bottom. So are there more preventative measures? Are there more resources available for these children? That's what concerns me as a parent.
Great question. We continue to make sure that we're focusing our energies around the mental health. Really, it's mental wellness. We want to make sure that our students are aware of that. But there are 2 new teams that began last year in every school, and one is called a threat assessment team, and the other one is a mental health team. And the mental health team are the group of not just school counselors, but nurses, psychologists that are part of this team. And when anybody can recommend the student to be looked at the mental health team, and they provide extra support for students who may be in crisis, and they look at the individual needs of that student and then come up with a school-wide approach to help those students. And so there really are whole school measures to make that support happen.
I just will add to that every year the board and the district leaders together prepare what we call our legislative agenda, and everyone knows that there are a lot of things that we are required to do that they don't give us money to do it, called categoricals. So one of the things on our legislative agenda this year is about mental health. Ms. Fisher is like the champion of the guidance counseling and the mental health piece, and she presented and we all accepted and have rallied around putting something forward to our legislators that is an issue, that when we talk about school safety, that's the first thing to look at. Does anyone understand Johnny enough to know that when he walked in this morning, he was really not feeling well and having issues, and did anyone say, how was your day? Mm-hmm. So it's small things like that, even training our teachers and staff to do that relationship piece throughout the whole school all day long with every child. But with some of the additional positions that are needed, we need extra funding to do that. And so we are going to the legislators to say, help us do what we need to do for our children.
All right, our next meeting will be October 16th. If you were elected tonight to the executive committee, you'll get an email with the information as well for when the executive DAC meetings are. Anyone is welcome to attend those, and those are all listed on the web page that they have for the district advisory committee. Also has all the dates for the executive committee meetings. At this time, I would happily entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do I have a second, Mr. Hall and second? All those in favor? See everybody October 16th.